Antony, we turn to you. You're the representative in New York to explain this, because I have a tough time following what's going on in the parliamentary process over in UK. How does this election that we've just heard is called for, if it happens December 12th, fit with the request for an extension on the Brexit from the EU?
Well, David, it's always a pleasure to come and talk to you about this topic, and we've been around this a few times before, and I think what it reveals, it's a very live issue, it's a very dynamic issue. To your question, we will see what the House of Commons votes on. They are literally voting as we sit here now on the Queen's speech. As you say, the Prime Minister very recently has said that he wants to have a vote on Monday about a general election. That is in order to address the consequences of the recent votes on Brexit, where the House of Commons did one important thing, which is they endorsed the general direction of the bill, but they said they wanted more time to scrutinise it. And that is what the Prime Minister is now setting out he will give. He will call for a general election, but, you know, I'm a civil servant, I serve the government of the day, and I'm waiting to see what happens next, just like you are.
Well, so as you always do, it's fascinating because you interject at a third issue, because we have the extension, possible extension on Brexit from the EU. We have the call for a general election, but then you also have, as you say, the Queen's speech, which, as I understand, is sort of the agenda for the government as they come into office, about what they want to accomplish. Now, they're voting on that right now. What happens if that's rejected?
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to cop out. We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. It's quite uncharted territory. I think it's relevant to the broader context, and it shows that the Prime Minister thinks that there needs to be a sort of another return to the people in the general election, and as I say, we'll have to wait and see what happens.
So, Michael Ward, as a businessman, you run Harrods over there. We all know Harrods. We've all shopped there. What does this all do for you? Does this affect you? Because there's a fair amount of uncertainty surrounding what's happening in London.
I think it doesn't affect us because we sit at the very top of the society. Unfortunately, the people it really impacts are those people who can least afford it. And I think that's the real problem about going through this process of Brexit. The UK luxury industry exports 80% of its product. We commissioned Frontiers Economics, who said that it will actually cost the luxury industry £6.8 billion in exports. So we'll get over it, but it will be quite a painful temporary transition.
Well, and that depends critically on what the arrangements are post-Brexit, if in fact we have the Brexit with an agreement, right? As I understand it, that might take a while to sort out exactly what the trade terms are.
Correct.
How long might it take? I mean, you're involved, actually, Antony, in talking at least preliminarily. You can't negotiate yet with the United States about a trade agreement. How long could this take?
Well, I think there's two aspects to the issue in the context that Michael is talking about. One is, what is the future relationship between the UK and the EU? And that obviously will then be negotiated as part of the future agreement between the UK and the EU. At the same time, as you say, we are focused on deepening and strengthening what is already an extraordinary trade and investment relationship between the UK and the US. That is what we're continuing to talk to our US colleagues about. It's also what we want to make sure we're having a really good dialogue with the industry about, which is why it's great to have Michael and the trade mission he's leading here this week to tell us what do they want to see from the governments, both in terms of a forward trade agenda and also avoiding some of the headwinds in the trade debate at the minute.
So, Michael, break it down, if you can, geographically. Which are the largest export markets for the UK producers? I mean, the United States versus Europe versus Asia?
The United States is a hugely important market for us. And New York in particular, which is 35% of the luxury market. So New York is in the top 3 of 75% of Walpole's members of the primary areas.
Explain Walpole, because this is an organization, I understand, of luxury brands.
It's the UK Association of Luxury Brands, representing about 267 brands, from Claridge's and the Savoy through to whiskey, through to every aspect of luxury. And part of our mission here is to bring all of those brands to New York to effectively sell product to America.
Explain again how important, I think you said, New York is to the group of Walpole brands.
Yes, New York is 35% of the luxury market in America.
Wow, I must say, I live in New York. I did not know that. that is news to me. So Antony, I understand there are a lot of things you can't predict. You can't know what's happening. What's going on within the British government as this continues?
I think we are focused on two things at once: delivering Brexit, and that's what they're working through in the UK now. And then out here, as I say, what we're focused on is what is the opportunity to work with Michael and his companies, work with sectors across the UK economy to deepen and strengthen the relationship between the UK and the US going forward. And there's both a positive agenda there in terms of what we want to do to prepare for an FTA. We also would like to get to a world where we're not applying tariffs to each other, so that's an important part of the conversation that we're having. And that's what we're focused on day to day out here.
We're speaking with Antony Phillipson. He's the UK Consul General in New York, and also with Michael Ward, who's the Managing Director of Harrods. Let's talk about issues surrounding the uncertainty within London, Michael, about people. Do you have trouble with people saying, we don't know if we get to live here anymore? For example, there are a lot of Europeans who have been living in the UK. Are there issues about where we will live, where our children will go to school?
There are issues that, particularly amongst our workforce, we have a large number of people who are Europeans. You know, if you're buying a beautiful Gucci product, it's nice to be sold by a very lovely Italian person. So we've been working with them for some time about how can we make sure that they can apply for citizenship and they can actually continue to be in the UK.
Now, we've heard from President Trump and others, and Antony for that matter, about the possibilities of an upside in US-UK trade relations as a result of Brexit. Do you see that from your point of view, either from Harrods or from Walpole for the general group of luxury brands?
I think there's twofold. One, I think it's a great opportunity for Walpole brands because America will open up to us more, and I think our opportunity to trade directly will be there. From a Harrods perspective, the majority of our growth is eastward. So China is our biggest market and close to the UK market for Harrods.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're really looking to China growth. Things like that are really important to you.
Well, we started about 10 years ago, and we represent about 25% of the retail spend of the Chinese in the United Kingdom.